The journey of Indian fairy tales to Russia is really very interesting. As we know that the main source of literature of any other country, either directly or indirectly, reaches to the people. And the same way it happened for the Russian people also. They earlier never had any access to the Indian stories because there was no direct contact between our two countries. Only through the sources of Central Asia and the part of Europe, the Indian literature reached Russia. And also through the people, I mean the tradesmen, who had wonderful business at different places of Russia and mainly through Central Asia, they also could supply them, provide them with the Indian folktales. The first recognition of Indian folktales was Panchatantra. But before that, we have the evidence that in Russia or in Central Asia, they found different Indian objects because of these tradesmen. And what are those things? Those are, some of them were ivories, some of them were ivory objects, and also the golden objects also. The ivory objects were comb, earring, and many other small items, but also the gold bars, the gold coins, the gold earrings, the gold bangles also reached there. And also some inscriptions through the Buddhist monks reached Central Asia, and it was known to the people later on that the Buddhist monks had regular visit to the Central Asian areas. And Russia had wonderful contact with these people and also with the tradesmen of those areas. The Indian people who had contacts with these Central Asian tradesmen, this provided them with the Indian folk and fairy tales. We all know that the Russian tradesmen who visited Alexandria in the 14th or 13th centuries, they found their Indian ships were landing at the port of Alexandria. And they met the Indian people who were on board. And perhaps they also told them something about India, mainly the riches of Indian culture. And at that time also, the Russian people, they knew Greek alphabets, Greek language, and Slavonic languages, and they could get the things in translated. They could get the originals in translated, though they were little changed, transformed, and also made the local character. Thus, the Panchatantra reached them with two versions, one from the Arabic side and the other from the Greek side. And from the Arabic side, the jackals, they were changed into their own names, like in the Muslim names, and the Greeks, they changed the jackals into the dogs, and they gave their own names. Panchatantra gave some opportunities to the Russian readers about the origin of the country, about the origin of the tales, that is India, and also about the folk and fairy wisdoms of those periods. Also, side by side, they could understand and read something which are not very popular in other places. We all know that the Strabo and Ptolemy visited India. They also wrote about India. But in those 8 days, the people were much more interested in folk and fairy tales and not in reality. So the Russian people, they almost believed which were folk and fairy tales, and they wanted to know India, Indian culture, the richness of India. And they all believed that the paradise exists in India. And we all know that there was also the story which we know as the tales from the Jataka, which was known to them as the story of the Varlam. Varlam was a hermit and he came to India through different roads and different entrances and reached the kingdom of Yusuf's father. Yusuf's father was a king and he found that his son should not be allowed to see what is real poverty, what is death, what is sickness. But one day, this son, Yusuf, came out of the palace and visited different areas of the city and could see a dead person, a beggar, and a blind man. And he got acquainted with the death, with the poverty, and with the sickness. And he himself became sick after that because he never met them earlier. There was no person, no practitioner, no medical person to treat him properly. Varlam was there. He was approached by the king, and Varlam cured the boy, and he became his disciple. So Varlam's disciple Yusuf, they changed. Varlam changed the disciple Yusuf to his own religion, and Yusuf then changed his religion to with his religion to the people of his kingdom. But after some years, Varlam left for his own area, and Yusuf followed him. They lived there for 35 years in the desert areas. And we cannot understand what is this area. Probably it might be somewhere in the Middle East or in Central Asia. But after 35 years, when Varlam passed away, Yusuf cremated him, and then he also gave away his life there itself. These are the stories which were very popular to the Russian people. Also, there were other people who were not very interested with the Ptolemy's version of India. They wanted to see the country directly. And they came to India, and they even mentioned about the Indian plants, about the Indian animals, about the Indian birds, about the Indian nature, and all together. And that found that it was really interesting to them because they found which were unknown to the Russian people. Because through these accounts, we came to know that they saw for the first time the elephants, the rhinoceros, and camels, and also also in fantasy, they found also griffins and also some other birds which were known as phoenix. And these phoenix we can find in different literature, in different accounts of different travelers. We saw them also in the wonderful illustration by physiologue. The physiologue or the physiologist, they also gave wonderful encounter about the Indian folk and fairy tales. These also have the same, almost the same knowledge about the Indian people, and even they found that the Indian people, there were different types. They had three legs, and some were half dog, half human being, half lion, half human being, and griffins are there. Then the wizards are there, magicians are there, and even the demons are there. Maybe demons they found with the Indian gods and goddesses which have few hands more than the original human being. And they might be thinking them as the demons, and that's why they mentioned about it in their accounts. We know about them, and then also the tale of Indian Empire, the tale of Indian Empire, and the tale of three monks. We found that they are almost the same, but written at different centuries, which gave also the account that the India is a very rich country. It has its own system, and there even lived the Christian saints. Because the Russian people, they believed in Orthodox Christianity, and these tales came from the Europe. They also wanted to believe that the India is a country of Christianity. And they even found that there are three saints which rule or which control the whole of India. One is at the north of India, Bartholomew the saint. One is at the south, the Saint Thomas, and one is Methodius and the central of India. So this north, south, and central are ruled by these saints, and even the belief was such that at that time the British king sent his ambassador, sent his own person representative to meet these saints, and also Pope the Third, Alexander the Third, he sent his own doctor to meet these saints. But Saint John was never met by anybody, and so they had to go back. But the stories are there that the India is a land of Christianity, and it was a very peculiar thing to know because Christianity came to India much later part. But tales are tales, folk and fairy tales have no boundaries to reach wherever it was. And one of them was after the visit of, the great campaign of Alexander the Great. This campaign was noted down as a very interesting one, where Alexander is meeting with the Indian people and with the Indian king when he was meeting with the Indian king Porus. Porus was called by his own people. At that time, he was killed by by Alexander the Great. And after that, Alexander met the saints there, and he wanted to know what is kingdom. They immediately replied him that the kingdom is nothing but the burden of gold and the burden of power. And when he asked who are the slyest element of the humanity of the nature, they immediately replied that the most sly animal is human being. They also, then Alexander the Great asked them some many other questions and they replied them accordingly. And these tales became very popular to the Russian people. Thus, the Indian stories reached to them through fables and through journeys of the tradesmen, of the people who visited India, and the encounter of different visitors at different times of the history. So the 11th, 12th, 14th centuries, Russian people got acquainted with the Indian folk and fairy tales with their own belief because they wanted to see that India as a very rich country with full of wealth, where paradise exists and where even all the rivers of the world, the origin is in India. Even the Tigris, Euphrates, Nile, along with Ganges, have the origins in India. They believed that in India there is a paradise, and the paradise is guarded by some hermits, some saints, and only some people who are not sinners they can reach there. Even in those area of paradise, not the reptiles, not the snakes, not the toads can live. If some animals or human being who are not friendly to that land, if they enter, they are found always as dead. So India is a country for the friendly people, and Russian people who have the interest for the India as the friendly country, they always preferred India to be their friend because India is the country of wealth, of happiness, of richness and culture with wonderful characters, of wonderful nature of people. So those are the things which reach them one after another through different stories, through different legends, and till today in Russia, the people have very much interest about the Russian folk and fairy tales. Simultaneously, India also has wonderful interest for the Russian folk and fairy tales. And these Russian folk and fairy tales character, even sometimes they mention that their origin is India. Say even Ilya Muromets, we can find that the origin of one of the main characters is India. He says that I come from India. So the Russian characters in their stories also find that the origin is India and the folk and fairy tales have reached into that society which enrich them for their own culture, for their own richness. Even much afterwards, Leo Tolstoy was also interested in Panchatantra and he made the stories in his own way, which are still very popular in Russia and also in India.